How you doing? This is George with Truck Driver Nation. So what we're going to go over today is going to be how to find your direct shippers. And there's going to be deliberation. People say, well, you ain't supposed to be in direct shippers as a freight dispatcher. Um, if you've been in trucking and you're a truck driver and you become a freight dispatcher and you've been doing that as long as I have connections. So why would I throw them away? It ain't like I was looking for them. So I already have a lot of connections. And it depends on how you do it. Now, look, I also have a freight agent license too. Well, it's not a brokerage license that I work under him as a freight agent. So that gives me accessibility to do either or. But I just wanted to be clarify that as a freight dispatcher, and I haven't seen it. So if you know the laws, I would love to know what the statute or whatever it is that actually has to do with that given law, where it's at, whether it's on the FMCSA or is it something that I'm not aware of. So that way I can actually give the correct data. So I don't know how that's set up, and I'm not going to pretend to act like I know something when I don't. But this is how to get those direct shippers, whether you're a freight agent, a broker basically, or a independent dispatcher. So when you're finding and securing these people, you obviously you're doing two things. You're trying to generate freight so you can maximize your overall revenue, but at the same time, you got to be competitive against other people because other people have been bidding for those loads too. And don't think that the actual direct shippers are not educated on what they need to be paying at any given point as well for what the freight market's actually doing. But the point is that money goes to the broker, then to the freight agent, and then to the driver. There's still meat on the bone when it comes out of the oven, basically coming from the direct shipper, and all the way to the point where it gets to the driver. So know how to negotiate so you can maximize your gross revenue is going to really depend on your negotiation skills and the position that you play inside this food chain. Okay. So the way I do it, before I get off any of this, I'm gonna just tell you directly how I do it. I don't do a lot of these steps because I use seamless AI, and knowing the people that I know, I mean, even when I'm on the broker local um, low board and I'm talking to brokers, I listen to them. I know which numbers are going to be more apt to work with me just based off of what who they are, and I know what's good for what, whether it's TQL, CH Robinson, Landstar, whoever it might be, XPO, whoever, right? So in that aspect, I know which ones are going to be willing to actually work with me, or they're just going to be only good for a brokerage connection to buy loads. Because remember, they're selling those. You're buying them as a dispatcher that your driver is going to get them there. And we obviously, that's how we generate our revenue. But anyways, I just strictly just tell them, when I'm talking to somebody and I don't make it magical, people act like it's some kind of whatever. But as a truck driver, and if you're becoming a freight dispatcher, the one baseline thing you need to know is you've been to a lot of shippers and been to a lot of receivers. And it's not that you want to mislead people, but it's part of sales. I mean, you call it line or whatever, but there's not a lot of difference in what you're doing versus being on the truck or being off the truck as a freight agent because you know what you're going to experience if whether it's a dry van, reefer, flatbed, or step deck, depending on your experience with the trailers. So almost everybody I know that you can easily look everything up on Google Maps, see the facility. You can go in Seamless AI; it'll tell you who the logistics coordinator is. It'll give you their LinkedIn, their Facebook, their phone number, their email, how much money they're making, and the data is out there with AI. So you can, whether AI is always correct, don't depend on AI being 100% on the spot. Always check your data, check your resources, check your pickup locations, check your addresses. Have they moved? Have they gone out of business? Obviously that will be a quick one because there's not going to be nobody there to take the call. But give me a second. But in the simplest of forms, that's how I do it. And being that I'm an actual driver recruiter, I talk to my drivers. Well, who have you been picking up with? People don't want to, not all drivers keep their data. But if you're going to work with a driver, if they're out there on the road or owner operators or whoever they might be, ask people, what do you know? Because they know. I mean, I'm looking for a new shipper. Do you know anybody? And whether you give them a kickback or not, 50, $100, they didn't do nothing. Okay. You did all the legwork on now. Obviously, they not got the connection, but you're doing the legwork to make that account work. So make sure not use, it's like generating leads. Use what actually fits that given problem. I can't put out ads for a a hairstylist and expect that to do anything with logistics. So make sure you stay inside your industry, and you have a lot of access to a lot of things if you just look at the value of it instead of going the path. I don't follow everybody else. If I'm going to burn my bridge, I'm going to burn it my damn self because I'm the one that built it. So, so you just depend on how you're looking at the market and how you're looking at your assets on based on who you can utilize and scale them. Keep a notes on them. Don't expect to remember everything. Get you a flow chart, or I mean not a flow chart, but like I do Google Forms. I know I got TMS and all these other stuff, but I use basic tools because I've been using them so long. For me, it's just easier to use. I mean, you go into platforms and they start having all these features, and I got to learn how to utilize every single thing inside that. And for me, it's just not. I just don't really like it. Even like Monday, somebody gave me Monday. I started using Monday, and I was like, man, this is a real pain because it depends on how who actually has the software. If I'm using their software, how they've got it set up. So I can't change none of the parameters. So I stick with Google Forms. I can share it with people inside that work with Truck Driver Nation. It makes it a lot easier on us. But anyways, let's go through some of the forms, and I'll highlight the ones I actually know what I actually got out of any given situation when it's how to find direct shippers, for example. So identify target shippers. That's going to be based on your truck. It's going to be based on where the driver's at, and it's going to definitely be based on that trailer. What's the capabilities of that truck? What is it with full tanks, the tractor, and the trailer empty? All the gear on there. So you got your baseline. So that tells you how much weight you can carry. Which region does that truck want to run, given on that driver, right? And so that's going to be some of the baseline stuff even before you're looking for these direct shippers. Now, manufacturing, you're talking about machinery, electronics, auto parts. Each one of these has its pros and cons. Machinery, you usually want, like, if it's going to really be machinery, no matter what it is, you really, unless it's something small enough to slide in the back of a dry van, you're pretty much will always prefer using a step deck. You can use a flatbed if it's going to fit on there, like a Conestoga. I just try to reduce the overall tarping effect. Now, if you got a step flatbed, and I've got to work with that flatbed, which all my drivers are step deck, then we'll obviously make sure you got the tarps that are required by them, and they'll tell you if you only need smoke tarp or you need to 6-foot tarps, 8-foot tarps, whatever it's going to be to get that equipment secured. And do you have the right securement equipment, chains, straps, corner blocks, whatever you're going to need. Electronics, usually going to be dry van. It's going to probably, if it is the electronics like I'm normally dealing with, they're going to secure the hell out of the door, might put safety tape, security tape on there, all kinds of stuff. Then it depends on where it's going. Is it going to the border? Is it going to another DC, which is a distribution center? Auto parts. Auto parts kind of use more like an end line type of service. So most time, if it's going to be auto parts, it's usually wherever the the assembly line is, and wherever they're actually storing their parts. Some of them don't even have it on the same ground. So it's kind of like an in company type of route thing. But I'm not going to do this to all of them. So I'm just highlighting manufacturing so you can, because that's the first one I've got on my list, so you can understand how I look at this. So machinery, I'm going to go into I go into AI because I use Seamless. In addition to what I already know, I'm going to go in there and look for where machinery is manufactured. Now, we're talking about everything. You got people that do tractors, okay? They get these Chinese tractors. They come out of like North Carolina, South Carolina, and that's where they assemble a lot of them. They don't put the tires on them on some instances, or the implements like the scoop on the front, the box, or the forklift, or whatever they're going to have with that equipment, and you take it to whatever the destination is. And, that's just one example of some of the machinery, but there's all kinds of machinery. If it's got a motor, it's considered machinery of some degree, whether it's recreational or something that you actually work with at a business. So when you're doing machinery, obviously, it's not always going to be coming from the manufacturer. It might be a third party that's bringing it into the country, and then they're distributing it out to other places because they built their business. In some instances, some companies like Caterpillar, whoever else, it's all them, right? But electronics, that's just going to depend on the manufacturer and where it's coming from and where it needs to go. Auto parts, depending on obviously where Detroit, you can do up in Indiana, stuff like that. But another one to look at is going to be retail and wholesale distribution. That's going to be consumer goods, furniture, and clothing. Another is going to be agriculture. Now we're talking about grains, which are extremely heavy. Produce, time sensitive, you're definitely going to need reefers for a lot of this, including the dairy, the meat, etc. So, you're going to be picking up from a manufacturer, like whether it's a a slaughterhouse or out of the fields, and you got to pre-cool your trailers, make sure the temperature's set correctly before you put that produce in there. You don't want them to be cooling it down coming straight out of the field, and make sure you pulp that stuff. Make sure your drivers pulp it because you're trying to secure it. But all this here is going to be seasonal. If you got the connections, whether it's apples or whatever, when that comes in the season, you can deal directly with them. I mean, they're not going to say no. I mean, they need trucks. It's their season. So you can always go directly to them. Construction, lumber, steel, roofing materials, and concrete products. Remember, construction slows down in the winter because you got cold weather, you got mud, all the crap that goes with being a lot of rain, right? Rain and snow. You can't really just start pouring concrete in the middle of the winter. It's not going to sit right. They do perk tests and all these different things on it to make sure that it meets the specifications, whatever building codes there are in that given area or whatever the project is. So when you're looking at this, that's the reason this slows down. But make sure that, when the season comes in, maybe you want to do reefer during the reefer season and then go back to go get your flatbed when it moves over into the next season. And a lot of people do that. They go reefer, flatbed, or they go even dry van flatbed. So that's the reason you see drivers of why you got more than one trailer, because I run with the seasons. And they find it to be more profitable. You ain't got to buy a brand new trailer. Sometimes you just buy a used trailer and fix it up. As long as it meets DOT inspection requirements, which is annual inspection, and you got it insured, you're good. Then we'll go to food and beverage. That's going to be the same thing, frozen or what the dry product or perishable items. Really, that kind of should have almost ran in with the other ones when it comes to agriculture. But these are going to be processed foods, like um, whatever pot pies or whatever stuff. It just depends. All these depends. But obviously, you can call these companies and try to talk to the logistics person and say, and tell them you've been there. I mean, I literally do. I tell them, look, I've been in your facility. I had a great experience. I was a driver, and now I'm a freight dispatcher or I'm a freight agent. And I was there when I was a driver. Come there, I'd load and had no problems. I get to wherever I was dropping at. You always have a good customer base. They get me right in, right out, whether it was a DC or not. And we all know that some degree is a lie because, you want to represent yourself in the best light, but you know how it is when you get to Walmart. You could or could not have a door, Same thing with Target. Okay. So keep that in mind when you're actually looking for your target shippers. Research and use online databases. Definitely. You got the ThomasNet, the Martin Dun and Bradstreet load boards, whether it's DAT, truck stop. They got places in there where you can know who they are. I mean, go in there. There's tools in there. There's data analytics, all kinds of stuff. You got to learn to use the software. If you're going, because load boards are the primary thing that most dispatchers use. So learn how to use this software. And there's training videos on this. DAT provides a lot of training that's free to access. Chamber of Commerce directories. You usually have to be a member of these Chamber of Commerce to actually get access to their data sheets for their region, for whoever they got as their manufacturers and whoever is producing a product in their region, because that's where they collect their tax money. But that's how it's broke down. So you might have to become a member, whatever fee it is, and it's basically pay for the privilege, right? LinkedIn and company websites. This right here, LinkedIn, I'm not a big fan of LinkedIn. I know people say, oh, well, that's an all business platform. Yeah, but it's not particularly what I'm needing because I've spent so much time trying to get attention and people don't respond. Your number one factor when you're actually you're going to be in this market of being a freight dispatcher or a freight agent is time. Don't drag your feet. You got to make the phone call. Don't sit there and play. Let's text it, or email it. They want to hear from you. Engage. If you don't stay engaged, how are they going to know you're serious? You gave me a phone call one day and I didn't hear from you for 3 months. Okay, and you're going to call me back after 3 months and you want me to take you serious? Then you're not really in logistics if you're not engaging. I mean, the early bird gets the worm. My task is the baddest damn dog on the yard keeps the bone. So you have to get in there and you have to scrap and fight and get your name at the top of it. If you can just get yourself in the door, say, give me 1 or 2 loads, and let me show you how my people perform. And at that point, it's not that you've got the contract and they're going to just start emailing you the list of whatever loads they have available if you actually have able to do it as a freight agent. But even as a freight dispatcher, at least you got your name there and keep that contact. That's your key into the kingdom with that given company. So make sure you call and you engage them. And I mean, I know that that's old school way of doing it, but old tactics work. Send them a gift, find out who they are, send them something to that company, and make sure that it's, addressed to them so they receive it. It may not do nothing for you, but it's still got your name in the door. And it ain't gonna be something, you're not buying them a damn car. Yeah, don't buy them liquor or nothing like that. Get them something that's feasible for the given situation of professionalism inside logistics. Okay. But just kind of remember that. I mean, when you're on the phone, ask them, you know, I mean, you got Facebook and other social media platforms that may reveal something about them because you're already going to know the city and state that they're out of. Now, whether they open their social media in those things, you just kind of search around. But this is like being an investigator. You got to put a little bit of legwork in it in order to get the results to find out actually who the underlying, whatever the underlying problem is to get you there, right? So, cold calling and email outreach, this is going to be the thing where you're doing constantly. Nobody likes cold calling. I get it. And because I see it through everybody. Me, I'll cold call any damn body. If I had the damn president's phone number, I call his ass, hey, what's going on with you? You don't know me, but my name is George DeLorme, and I've got some issues I'm dealing with because of what you're up to. Get this off my shoulders. I'm a U.S. citizen. I shouldn't be having to sweat this. I'm one of the rednecks that was there from the beginning. I'll be there at the end. Okay. My whole family's plotted all over the United States. So it ain't like we're newcomers. Okay. We were there from the beginning. American Native Indians. You know what I mean? So for people that don't like cold calling, you're going to have to suck it up. If you can't cold call, emails are, if you're going to cold call first, if you establish a rapport, then you need to email immediately after that. Because it's like 17% of people check their emails. It's not a high percentage. And they just go right past them. But if you're there and you got your company name, hey, I'm Truck Driver Nation. My name's George DeLorme. Now I've got both of those on my email that's going through, and that's subconsciously, whether it works or not, everybody's brain pan works differently. So hopefully that'll stimulate them, but to also get your visibility. So don't just do a halfwit. Oh, I'm just sending you an email, let you know I'm here. Engage, but don't make the content too long or make it off point. Keep it strictly to the content that you discussed with them. So they'll remember that you're engaging them still on that given topic, that you're having enough motivation and energy that you're not just dragging your feet and hoping that it falls out of the sky. As far as now, call your shipping managers, that's your logistics coordinators, or supply chain managers. All of these are the same thing. So whether they call this a shipping manager, logistics coordinator, or supply chain managers, they're all watching the freights and they're going to know what they're willing to pay for any given loads that they do because most of their customers are the same old customers because that's who they supply. You can't say, well, we're supplying X product and we got this many and this many. You can only do so much, even in the supply chain of supplying goods, whether you manufacture from that location or not. And you're just the mediator, the next stepping stone coming from that given product, that company, and you could be just storing it almost like cross docking it. Okay. Offer better rates, faster service, and specialized freight solutions. Okay, when you're actually providing your service, because you don't produce nothing as a shipper, you need to make sure that when you're looking at these better rates, don't lowball it. If it's same thing if you're dealing with a broker. If you can't take it for that amount of money, even if you're doing it from the freight agent side, can't do it for that type of money, that there's not enough money to go down it so you can actually sell it because you're so anxious to try to get your foot in the door and to impress the crowd, you're not impressing them. Ain't nothing that you haven't done or anything that you've been fixing to tell them that they have not already heard before. Just because they produce a product, logistics and transportation to move their products is still one of the biggest tasks that every company requires. Everybody requires logistics to be able to get the product from point where, hell, when the dirt came out of the ground before they melted it down to make iron or whatever it is, it's all got a start point, it's all got an end point, and transportation is the way it all got there. Now, faster service. Okay, I'm driving 1,000 miles and somebody else is driving 1,000 miles. In reality, there's no way other than the quality of equipment, and you can't say the quality of driver because you only go so fast to get an item from point A to point B. But outside that, there's not a lot else that you're going to be able to offer them that the other person hasn't offered as well. So the best thing is, hey, I got brand new 2025 tractors with brand new 2024 and 25 trailers. If there's reefer stuff, got brand new carrier reefer units or whatever reefer unit system you're using to keep your trailer cool. And also saying specialized freight solutions. Now, It depends on what I'm doing. If I'm doing, let's say, flatbed or step deck, I'm going to use that because it's just easier for me to reference to. That I'm going to tell them, hey, I got step decks. That's the reason I do step decks. So I got over dimensional. I can do oversize. I can clear the height. Depending on the weight of the product, I still can't exceed 80,000 pounds or 40 tons. So I know that I've got the ability to carry anything over dimensional. And in that's where there's no given market. People say, oh, no, there's a given market. When you're doing RGN, when you step off a little bit into step deck, it kind of moves over to that little RGN section where there's no given price if you start dealing with permits, escorts, and stuff. And step decks do carry that type of stuff, but you still got to be able to carry the overall um, the weight capacity in order to be able to make that work. So some of that gets a little in the thing. What are you willing to give? What I'm willing to do? And seriously, try to let them give you the price for what they're doing. Say when we got it, I mean, like what I would say, well, when I got the freight the first time, because I'm telling them I'm representing, I've been there before, I moved freight before, because I'm going to look at everything to make sure that I line up with what there's actually going on. And people say, well, you're lying. Okay, if you're in logistics and you're not trying to generate freight, go and tell them the truth that you have no damn experience. You've never dealt with their products and you never serviced them. Okay, see how that works out for you. It's the same stuff you're carrying. Don't make a shit where it's at. It's freight. But in the avenue, if I'm doing that type of trailer where I'm doing a step deck for them, then I say, I've got the capacity to carry anything because I understand you're building different components, different products, like say machinery. You got big motors that might go to the oil fields or jet engines or whatever it might be. I have the equipment that's ready to go. And so, you're kind of making yourself stand outside the market. We've been in the specialized freight solutions, or we're just carrying over dimensional stuff because that's really what it is. Like if it was a car hauler or oil field, crude oil, or we're licensed. We have the skilled people with lots of years of experience, and we love the opportunity, obviously, to get in there and move some of your freight. I'm going to keep it short. There's all kinds of scenarios for that. Now, follow up professional emails and proposals rapidly. Don't drag your feet. I'm going to contact them next week. Look, you just need to do it like this. And my wife got me started on this one. Is this the last phone call I need to give you? Because if they're not interested, they're not interested. Why would you waste yourself, whether you're a recruiter, a dispatcher, or a freight agent dealing with direct shippers? Don't let your leads waste your time. You got to engage and be successful, as we call it, conversions. If you're not successfully transition that over to where you're actually generating revenue, you've wasted your time. So don't waste your time on beating dead bushes. Okay. And I'm going to leave it at that on that one. So visit trade shows and industry events. I've never been able to visit any of these outside some, ventures I did before that didn't have nothing to do with transportation though. But you got logistic trade shows. They say the CSCMP, don't know what it is. A MODEX, MODEX, have no idea. I know what FreightWaves is, but I've never been to none of their events. Industry Pacific expos like food, retail, construction, manufacturing. That one I would go to. That right there is probably going to be where I probably could handle myself because I know what we're dealing with because I'm transportation. My job is to get these items from point A to point B, and I can easily see what they're doing and how I can interject my ability to help them out. So that would probably be a good one for myself. Networking with manufacturers and distributors directly. That's the whole point of calling the direct shipper. You want to get a hold of them and present yourself and see how you can get it. And the biggest thing that you have a benefit on, don't miss this. If you're a freight dispatcher, your driver is there. His trailer is back to their dock, whether he's picking up or he's or at the shipper or the receiver. Get him if they want to let him talk to them because it benefits him because he's already there. That's in his route. Say go in there and find out who the hell is in charge and get their name and their number. Because remember, if I'm going through somebody like a brokerage or whatever, even though I've got a brokerage license, as a freight dispatcher, you really got a contract that says you're not supposed to engage them. But I got a brokerage license, and the MCs match each other, so they has nothing. One don't have nothing to do with other. Even though I can say I'm considering myself an asset-based carrier, but my MCs have nothing to do with each other because I'm using that driver's MC, and I've got a totally different brokerage license that has nothing to do with that driver because I don't provide nobody with the MC number as far as dispatching freight. If they can go in there and get that information, then you can engage them as a freight agent with no issues, no, you didn't break nobody's contracts or nothing like that. So in that essence, you can actually get in contact with them because your guy's there. And if he decides to interject anything, if it's a salesman, he would definitely represent himself. But you, as the agent or that's actually going to actually contact them, that gives you a little bit of information because your driver should be able to tell you, well, what did you see? What did you hear? So that gives you a little bit more cutting edge on way you're going to present yourself with whoever this person is, because now you got a name, you know where they're at. You know, you ask them, hey, well, where was she at? Well, she was upstairs on the second floor on the loading docks. Okay. And when you call them, that gives you more information if you're going through that way to actually get to them. You don't want to go through secretaries, these gatekeeper people, when you can go around all that now. AI's changed the game. The software's changed the game. And because you don't want to waste your time. I'm not calling a facility 5 times, getting the same damn girl sitting in front of a desk that probably don't know shit about logistics. And her task is, well, let me just take your name and number. I'm not even wasting my time. I appreciate it. I mean, you can say, well, you can leave it and roll the dice. Yes, you can. I would be better off if you could just give me an email or something like that. I could keep sending it if I'm going to actually bulk email out or something like that. But remember, when you're doing bulk email, that it has a tendency after so many times to actually turn into spam. So now you have to tell them, hey, check your email or look in your spam. So that's the problem with that. Um, but anyways, that's one way to kind of view that. Um, so ownership, you need one when you're dealing with somebody. Give me a second. So when you're actually how to bid on freight from direct shippers, these are some of the basic things you need to understand. One, you got to have to know how to price them, but there's some things you need to know before you even get to that to understand what you're pricing. Understand the shipper's needs. Now, what type of freight do they move? Dry van, reefer, flatbed, step deck, right? Because that's the main ones I teach. Obviously, there's other trailers, but that's the ones I teach. Um, how are they shipping? What are their shipping lanes and what are their volumes? So the shipping lanes, where are they running that freight? So where's their customer base at? Okay. And then what kind of volume? How many loads are they moving out of there? Are they moving 3 loads out of there a month? Are they moving 50 loads out of there a month? Are they moving hundreds of loads out of there a month? They're not just going to give here's all the freight. We trust you to get it done. They're working with more people than just you. So if have over too many people working on it, they might put you on pause. But you keep banging that door, somebody's going to slip, whether they've had trucks go down or whatever happened to give them a bad reputation because they didn't deal with the right people, because even the people I deal with, I have to put my foot in their ass because it's not that I want to, but I need to make sure that you're not going to hurt me and I'm going to stay effective in what I'm doing, because you have no right to destroy my business because you're not ready to be in logistics or you're 1 foot in and 1 foot out. So also, what are their pain points, their costs, their delays, their damage, their limited capacity? So when you're asking them, just say, hey, just ask a simple question. At this given point, where you are in your industry, based on your transportation needs, where do you see or any of the key points that if you had to pick one, what would be the biggest factor that I could or that you would need? Don't say yourself. Try to keep your name out of it because you're trying to learn from them what they need, not what helps you or what you need. Because once you get the information, then you can move forward to the next step of presenting your problem solving skills and what you're able to provide. But listen to them and find out what are some of their biggest issues when it comes to moving their freight. Do they have let's say they have a customer and the damn customer is way out in the middle of nowhere. Good one, right? Get out there, you drop the load. Now you can't pick up. There's nothing around. The deadhead, it's like, shit, let's say over 300 miles. So knowing that particular lane might be a big issue for that given shipper. So how am I going to do that? Am I going to be able to strategize it where I can get more money on it so I can at least pay for the fuel? Not that I'm wanting to run my driver an extra 300 miles with no compensation, but how am I going to manipulate that given freight to get that truck to there, get that load off, and then still be able to pick up something else? Because I got to do some legwork. I need to get on the phone and start looking at those given regions. And sometimes that takes time because you're building up more like not a supply chain, but a logistics chain to some degree, where you're not just dropping the ball, going there, and you're like, oh, here, sit for 24 hours. Let me see if something pops up. You can't do that. You got to be proactive as a freight dispatcher, or you're going to lose your driver. I don't want to lose owner operators because I dropped the ball. So when you're looking at these things, every factor you're doing, don't just instantly answer, yes, I can do that. You need to sit back and meditate on it if you need to. If you don't have the answers right there in your sleeve because you know somebody or you know how to get that handled, don't present yourself in bad light, because it will catch up with you, because they're going to say, oh, well, we talked to you last time, you didn't have nothing. and and just say, hey, I'd like to schedule another meeting. Let me look at some factors and see how I can obviously, intersect in this given problem, see how I can be productive for you to help you with these issues and take it off your shoulders. If you give me this one, that gets my foot in the door with you. Watch me, see my performance, our consistency. And then obviously, if you just get in even on that level and you can pull it off, you got your foot in the door. And it will eventually come around where now they're picking you up for more loads and a little more loads over a given time, still based on the market, right? Because if they are not producing, people aren't buying, why are you going to produce? So just keep that in. That's just one area, but you can go into all kinds of scenarios with all these, right? So next thing is going to be how to calculate your cost before bidding. I told you, don't just start wrapping numbers off because you're looking at a freight board or something that you heard. You need to have solid numbers. You're running a business. You're representing people. So don't just start babbling crap and you don't know what you're doing. For one, biggest one, fuel costs. Consider the fluctuations. What's the market doing? Have you been looking at the national fuel averages on the energy department site? I forgot what the name of it is. It's not that I don't use it. I just don't remember all the names for every single thing. So driver pay for your owner operators or your carriers you work with. What are they going to need to cover that driver's pay? Because what you're looking at is the overall cost to make that truck move. Okay. Um, the numbers go all over the place. So for me to tell you it's $1.80 or it's 268, I've heard people represent what they need for pay, and their shit is so far out of balance, and they're justifying extra stuff that's not actually going to ever be calculated into it in the logistics market. So you can come up with all the numbers you want, but if it ain't actual feasible practices inside logistics, you're not just going to get the numbers because you came up with a rationale or reason why you need it. It has to actually be either fixed costs or variable costs that you're actually building your content off of to be able to bid for what you're actually going to bid for. Tolls, maintenance, insurance. See, now the tolls is variable, the maintenance is variable, but you still have to have a maintenance program and insurance, which you got to have insurance. You're not even going to be moving if it's your MC because you got to have that for your BOC3 to obviously kick it in. Backhaul opportunities to reduce the deadhead miles. Let me tell you about this. That's the whole thing about wherever you're going. I don't know why you're calling it backhauls, but there ain't no such thing as backhauls. It's just the next load. That term got in there and it has stuck. When you drop a load, I get to that next place to pick up. They're not going to say, oh, here's a backhaul for you. Here's the load. Okay. People use backhauls so they can legitimize screwing you out of money because they say, well, it's a backhaul. And it has to do with carriers because I'll tell you, it's a backhaul and they just don't pay as much. How in the hell is that possible when every point of the mount on the map is independent of the load you just dealt with? And that's just insanity. And people go for it because they don't want to rationalize or really look at what they're actually embedding themselves with when they're dealing with people. So you obviously need to make sure that when you're taking that freight to whichever point that you can get in there or where and even it can come on the front side. Let's say if you're going to pick up and the last loads that you're usually dropping before you go get that one is 150 miles away because there's nothing else in that given region. What if you're going to a power plant? You're taking loads of paper because they're going to burn it in there, right? They basically they burn it and they turn it into steam because they're steam powered power plants, right? And they'll be in the middle of nowhere. And that energy don't even go for that given region. It might go states away before it goes to that particular place where they're actually buying that electricity from whichever power plant's coming from. So you need to know what goes on with your freight so you can understand what you're doing and what's going on. Offer competitive and profitable rates. That's the challenge, right? So use market rate tools like DAT Rate Review and truckstop.com's rate analysis. Go in there, look at these tools. They definitely help, but that still, when it comes into the day, what are you going to be able to actually pull that freight for? If it's not profitable and it's not beneficial to them and not profitable for you, let's go to this is going to be a one-sided deal. You want the business, absolutely, but if it's not profitable for you, you just can't do it. So kill the deal and come back and reassess that later because you got the person's contact information. Come back at a different time when the market changes. Calculate your cost per mile, CPM, and profit margins. That's the whole thing. Variable cost, fixed cost. Once you get all that done, you can determine what do you have to have dollar per mile or cents per mile to actually make that equipment be able to move effectively and not be coughing up blood and staying in the red. Be flexible with the volume-based discounts for large long-term contracts. Now, if you're doing a yearly contract There's two ways to view this. You can run that contract. Make sure you got enough capacity. Maybe in the background, you keep your contacts and continue to make social network and communicate with people, because if the load boards change, I mean, you've then made a long-term contract, but the freight on the load board is higher than what you're paying for that, and it's coming basically on the same baseline of where you're at. Even though I'm on a contract, why would I take that? Because if it's high enough, sorry, I'm going to take the one off the load board. I have to stay profitable. My immediate bottom line baseline interest is that owner operator maintaining profitability. Will I lose that contract? If I can't get it covered, yeah, good chance, because it depends on how many available loads are there and how much equipment's in that given area. So if I'm going to do that, I need to make sure that not only am I going to be able to get the money that, is in that, what they're asking for, but that I can actually get higher, because it's a good chance I'm going to lose that contract. I mean, yeah, you probably can do it once or twice and get away with it, but don't continue to think you're going to do long term, and they're not going to red flag you and say, well, once it gets done with this contract, for whatever given period it was, they're not going to cut you loose. So now you're all the way back to 100% on the load boards if that's a given region you have to run. So make sure you do the pros and cons and even talk to the driver at that given point, because this is something that they're going to understand. If we don't run this contract, we're going to lose that. And then that's going to put you all on load board, even though this given load, we don't know how many weeks that price might be up there. It might be a one-time deal. So we want to roll the dice, get the higher paying load, and you possibly lose the contract, because once they get done, it's a done deal. Now, submit a professional freight bid proposal. Don't you make sure you do correct paperwork representing your company, what you're talking about, and who you're actually addressing that information to. So introduce your company and your overview of what your capabilities are, including your equipment, your coverage, and your reliability. Now, this right here, this reliability, whether when you're dealing with direct shipper, depends if you're going to use references or whatever you're going to use. You got to paint a picture so that they understand who you are. They don't know who you from Jack. They may never even meet you face to face. They may never even do a video conference with you, but you want to be able to represent yourself in the best light you can with these factors as far as your equipment. Now, the coverage just comes to do the insurance, because they're going to require a certain amount to insure in case that damn truck ends up on its roof, that it can cover that freight loss for that. If it still falls in the OS&D, so you got a shortage, you just lost a whole damn load. And what if it's a multi-million-dollar whatever piece of equipment on the back that was custom made for something? So the issue, and it don't take a lot for people to do, saying it's totaled. I've seen that, because as a car hauler, car is barely damaged and they total them like nothing. Throw them in a shipping container, send them off to another country. But anyways, price and breakdown, make sure that you get them to understand that your per mile or per load rate, and why, and so itemize it. And it's not you justify it, but show them just what you have to have, and this is the reason I have to have it. Transit time and service level guarantees. So same thing, like you're signing a carrier agreement. That's, as the freight agent, that's going to be what you're actually passing on to the dispatcher. But you can actually, this is what they do. They manipulate what's going to be best for them as a freight brokerage or a freight agent in that given scenario when they're giving it to that carrier. If it's something that's going to actually make them lose money, they pull it out. If something that's possibly rolling the dice, or they gain because they basically are saying that if you fail to produce, then they can fine you for it. And that comes off your overall gross revenue for that given truck. So when you invoice them, they're not going to pay that invoice for that amount. They're only going to pay what they figure based on what you violated inside that agreement. So keep that in mind. And it goes a lot of different ways, but I'm keeping this short. I will be here all day. So value added services like tracking, expedited shipping, customer support. Yeah, you got ELD, you ain't got micro trackers. If you're on the freight agent side, you're going to throw a micro tracker so you can track that load. You're going to know the driver's name, know his phone numbers, know everything about him so you can contact him. Expedited shipping means basically as soon as it's ready to go, you got a truck there at the door ready to grab it so you can get it there, because you don't want to shut down a line. What if it's auto parts? You didn't get it there in time and there was already close calling for whatever reason, however the loads got stacked, and you don't get it there neither. Now that line shut down. They're not producing nothing. It is literally sitting still. So you don't want to be caught up in that type of factor, depending on whatever that company is producing, or not that company is producing, but what their customer needs in parts or whatever it is for to keep their business going. Customer support, make sure they understand you are there for their needs. So whether there's something goes wrong with that truck, goes wrong with the load or anything, that you're there to intercede. There's constant two-way communication between you and your shipper, for example. So let them know no matter what time of day it is, there is some way that they're going to be able to get a hold of you. Not that they send you a text message and you answer 4 hours later. You need to give a time limit to some degree. We'll get back with you within 30 minutes. Putting as soon as possible. They don't want to hear that. They want specifics because everything in the United States is accountability and everything in the United States is based on time. So, anyways, follow up and negotiate. Now, if the shipper pushes back on pricing, in other words, reducing it, offer flexibility with load volume and contract length. If you're going to do that, but remember, you're coming into the door, you may not have that contract be the first thing. They might say, well, here, we'll try you on a couple of loads because every business size is different. Every business practice is different. So hey, you're here. Let's say if I'm coming out of Dallas, Fort Worth, I'm going to Houston, and that load comes out of there every Thursday, going to somebody in Austin or wherever it might be. Let's just keep it short. Yeah, I'm here by Thursday morning every week. I've got my loads already set up, and I'm going to be here every Thursday morning to pick this up. So you're there. You just start picking them up. You're still going to do, if you're going to do direct them, they're still going to give you a contract agreement and everything because you still got to, whether you're doing it directly with them or you're going through a broker, it depends on how they're going to want to work it, because they're protecting themselves. So they got the choice on how they're wanting to do it. But based on that, you can win that contract just by knowing, or we're not winning the contract, but winning that load to be able to be there every Thursday morning to secure that freight. And that's going to, not only is that going to build you a good reputation because you're there every Thursday morning, but that also builds you a reference. And so remember, everything has more than one moving part on it. So don't lose your references when it comes to this, because those are going to be valuable tools when you're dealing with certain people, as far as wanting to secure their freight. Now, emphasize your reliability and customer service. Yes, you can emphasize this, but the reality is shit happens. But tell them, what your overall history is, who you've ran with, reference type of thing, and you can reassure them all day, but you're talking a bunch of shit. They want to see your performance. They're looking at results. I get people all the time saying, I can do this, I can do that. I'm like, dude, you're talking a bunch of shit. Show me. Don't talk to me. Show me. I come from the show me mentality. If you can't show me what you're telling me you're worth, and you say, well, I had a problem with this. Okay, I don't care if you tell me you had a problem with something. You just brought me a problem, okay, because you didn't show me. So what do you think your word's worth? A lie is a lie. Okay, I don't give a damn what form it comes in, but just make sure when you're telling these people about your reliability and your customer service, you can reemphasize that you got that ability, but they're going to want to see what you're made of. And make sure that driver knows you got to perform on this. If he can't, and you see what he's been driving, what he's doing, don't put him on it. Now, once a deal is reached, ensure clear contract terms. That right there is up to you. Whatever y'all negotiate it, make sure everything is in writing, not verbal. It has to be in writing. If they back out and they don't want to put it in writing, that's a red flag, and you probably need to get some clarity on some stuff, but it's got to be in writing. That's the bottom line. If ain't writing and there ain't company signatures of the correct representatives on that given issue, then walk away. They're playing games with you. So final thoughts on this, basically finding and bidding on direct shipper freight takes persistency, correct industry knowledge, absolutely, and relationship building. You got to build the relationships. This is a communication, social networking deal here. By combining research, which don't take long to get these days, networking, strategic pricing, and strong service offerings, you can successfully secure and retain direct shipper contracts. And it doesn't matter whether you're on the dispatch side or the freight agent side, or consider yourself brokerage. That's what they're looking for. All of that right there says service, service, service. None of that says you produce nothing. So if you can't maintain and honor these service agreements or service service what performances, then you're probably not going to keep that customer very long. Remember, it's hard to get a new customer. It's easy as hell to lose somebody. So before you step off in this, get your head in the game. Think about what you're doing. Train yourself up. You can do a couple of hit and misses and all that stuff. Good. But what if your first hit, the first time you try, you get somebody that's absolutely interested in you, but you don't have your shit together and you don't even understand what you're doing. So make sure you're consistent on what you're doing with that given person, and you're staying to that given agreement. But anyways, that's going to be all I'm going to do on this. That pretty much what covers everything to some degree. I know there's a lot more to this. There's always more to these subjects. But that gives you some kind of baseline to kind of work off and to think about. Don't just listen to it, say, oh, I agree. Think about it. Go over the topics, research each topic or point discussed so you can get more in depth. There's plenty of content out here these days, so don't just halfway. This is extremely important. That's the reason I'm saying this the way I am. This is extremely important. This is what makes or breaks your business. This is the biggest point of hardship right now in the logistics market. So this is extremely important. But anyways, if you have questions, have concerns, or you just even want to just chat with us, truckdrivernation.com. If you want to get out of the trucks, or you want to become a freight dispatcher, or you need your next driving job, make sure you go to our website. We have driving positions open, ready to go for drivers that are, just go back there, pick out which job, let us know which job ID it was, and we'll assist you on getting boarded for whatever you're wanting to do, whether it's local, regional, or over the road. If you want to be a freight agent, let us know. We don't do freight agents till after you've actually become a freight dispatcher, because we need to ensure you're basically going backwards. You're going driver, freight dispatcher, and then freight agent. It's just the way it needs to be played to ensure that you're actually performing at your best and that it's protecting us, especially if you're going to work with us. But anyways, phone number 210-343-1118, 210-343-1118. You can also text us through truckdrivernation.com, or you can also email us through support@truckdrivernation.com. Also, keep in mind, if you're actually in the industry, you need back office help. We've got sources that they're actually outsourced. So they're people that we deal with. They work for American companies, and they work for big call centers and stuff, and they still need jobs. So $200 to $500 a month is a great price for having these people assist you in your given goal, whether it's inbound or outbound calls, or being just data entry or whatever you're going to need them for. But anyways, I hope this helps, and I hope you learned something. And for drivers out there on the road, please be careful, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.